Insert exciting theme music. Maybe we'll do that great punk classic, Jesus Was a Communist from the 80s. Jesus was a communist. Jesus didn't like the rich. All right. Hello. All right. So this is Charlie. Once again, I call myself the Commie Preacher, and this is the Commie Preacher YouTube channel. We are organizing the Church of the Revolution, which is dedicated to the principle Jesus was a communist. And so today we're going to talk about what kind of communism, and that will be under the phrase love's communism, or the communism of love, whichever you want. But I use love's communism not to confuse what I'm doing with the title of a recently released book by the title The Communism of Love. The phrase the communism of love actually goes back pretty far. Karl Marx actually used it in a letter to Engels, where he was criticizing Wilhelm Wittling, who was a member of the League of the Just, which was a communist organization founded in part by Wilhelm Wittling. And Marx and Engels joined it because they wanted to be a part of a communist organization. They took it over, renamed it to the, I forget, the working, I don't remember. The name that Marx gave it was a precursor to the First International of the Communist movement. So what I'm going to do here today is just describe my particular take on communism and what it looks like, what it sounds like. And this is actually based off of a sermon I wrote, like, probably more than a decade ago. Maybe not more, but around 2012. Maybe 2013, so close to a decade. And I called this the communism of universal love. And so this is a little more scripted than some of my other stuff. Sorry, my hat's got some dusty stuff on it. All right. Hey, we've been in the trenches fighting capitalists. All right. So let's do this thing. Emma Goldman was a great anarcho-communist feminist writer, and she once said something along these lines: if I can't dance, I don't want your revolution. And I'm here to say that if it isn't about love, I don't want your communism. Communism, as I understand it, is fundamentally based on love, based on the desire to uplift and elevate the lives of the oppressed and suffering out of the grind of oppression. That's what communism means to me. It isn't a logical politics that tries to calculate what is the best possible way to get the least possible suffering or whatever. How do we survive as a solitary, isolated socialist state in the midst of capitalist encirclement? All those are important questions, but that's not what communism is really about. It's about love. In fact, the word commune, C-O-M-U-N, simply means common. It simply means shared. That's what communism is. Now, Che Guevara actually agreed with me when he said, the true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality. And just for good measure, I'm going to quote from the Apostle Paul, as translated by Clarence Jordan, who himself was a Christian communalist. And he writes this in the Southern vernacular. Even though I renounce all my possessions, give my body as a flaming sacrifice, but have no love, I accomplish exactly nothing. If you watched my first video, Jesus Made Me a Communist, you will know that I have been drawn to communal living since I was a teenager, when I first learned about communes from the Jesus movement in the mid-70s. And I lived with a commune founded by Mennonites for 9 years. And I currently rent from that same commune with a gap of about 15 years, a little longer maybe. From the Gospels, I learned that Jesus of Nazareth condemned whole nations that deprive and harm the hungry, the thirsty, the homeless, the sick, and the prisoners, as stated in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. I also learned that the first gathering of Jesus' followers on Pentecost Day shared all things in common, sold their property so that there was no one in need. And with this basic vision of radical love, I embraced love's communism as the exact same calling that Jesus mentioned, to seek first the basileia ho theos. All right, what is that? That's a Greek phrase. Basileia means regime. Ho means of, theos is God. Or you could say the divine regime, which I believe can be translated today in our terms. The regime that Jesus preached was a communism of love, a divine communism, a paradise on earth, and nothing less will satisfy my religious faith. And of course, in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus prays, or tells his followers, pray that the divine regime come and that the divine will be done on earth as it already is in the heavens. We don't need to organize the stars and the angels or whatever may be out there, up there, in there. All we need to organize is this world to become like heaven. There is no far-off planet called heaven that humans go when they die. We are here to make this world heavenly itself through the communism of love. I was a working class college dropout in the late 80s, and I returned to school and first read Karl Marx, and then discovered anarcho-communism, studied the great historical events, heroes, and thinkers of secular communist movements. And today, as a universalist minister, I can freely learn from religious and atheist communists and everyone in between and beyond that spectrum. My current take on love's communism is just my attempt to distill what I understand communism to be from all of those sources that I have read and experienced, and I exclude none of them simply because of a bias. I try to understand all people, all events that have been influenced by the vision of communism. And so how do I distinguish, if you will, communism, love's communism, from secular and other forms of communism? And let me go back to what is considered the most common definition of communism. Communism has been traditionally defined as to each, according to need, from each, according to ability. And sometimes the traditional says from each according to ability, to each according to need. But I actually want to begin with the need. What is the need that communism is trying to fulfill? And the suffering that we live in our world, the starvation, the poverty, the political disenfranchisement, the white supremacy, the racism, the homophobia, the transphobia, all of that oppresses humanity structurally, and the majority of humanity suffers under some regime of structural oppression. And so with this question of what do humans need? Yes, they need the things Jesus spoke of: food, drink, healthcare, freedom. They need all those things. And so I would expand this definition of communism to say every human being is a deserving recipient of abundance from the natural world and from our economic creativity and productivity. Everyone deserves an abundance of that. No one should be poor. And according to need, we see everyone needs not only physical and economic needs, but they have relational needs. They have a need to be cared for. And we believe that every human being is full of the generous potential to both help one another economically as well as relationally. Everyone can be a contributor to the satisfaction of a sustainable, generous world for everyone. One way to understand love is that it is a passion for the well-being of others, a transformative generosity. And our existence is the outcome of complex, generous processes, creative processes that stretch back to the dawn of time, explosive cosmic energies, stardust chemistry, planetary formation of oceans, land masses, warming and cooling climates, the molecular miracles of biogenesis, natural selection for environmental viability, and then sensory awareness that evolves into our complex relational minds and consciousness and agency and will. Each one of us was conceived in some moment of passion, unless we were artificially conceived, and there are probably a few people out there who were, but for the most part it occurs in a moment of passion. The best passions nurture us. They form us into agents and persons who love fiercely and justly. And of course, negative passions are also real. They arise when desires become obstructed from their optimal, healthy fulfillment. Evolution contains both creativity, destruction, abundance, and suffering. And the struggle between fulfilling the generous cosmic potential that we can call love and the negative obstructions generated by frustration and hate frames our existence over eons of time down to the present. Love's communism integrates the classic principle of creating an order of mutual interdependence with the passion of love that runs through all of life. Transformative generosity fulfills each being's complex relational, biological, and physical needs. Transformative generosity contributes to this fulfillment as a communal, interdependent abundance. Love's communism embraces all beings from weakest to strongest and nurtures their optimal, sustainable fulfillment. And through all of that, I come up with this new definition of communism. To each being, the communism of love provides relational wholeness and physical abundance. And from each being, love's communism empowers their generosity and creativity to be shared with all. Love's communism understands all human beings, all beings, living beings, as ecologically interdependent. This is the eco-socialist principle of communism. Each living being deserves greater health and well-being. Each physical system deserves freedom from degradation and pollution. Each being contributes creative generosity to the overall qualitative flourishing of our global ecosystems. And love, as a transformative generosity, embraces the well-being of all species, from the smallest to the largest, from the simplest to the most complex. And with an ecological, eco-social vision, communism of love aims to replenish and revive rather than deplete and pollute our world. So the first principle is eco-socialism, ecological abundance and creativity. Communism has traditionally been understood as an economic theory, an economic vision against poverty and class domination. And we believe, we agree, we affirm with traditional communism that economic poverty and class domination is inherently opposed to the well-being of all humankind and all living creatures and beings. We affirm this radical principle and side with a revolutionary engagement with class struggle to win a classless society. It is possible. Heaven on earth is possible. At the risk of oversimplification, I could say that radical love has been one of the key factors that has lacked at times in the attempts to create communism in the 20th century. Where genuine love and compassion has not been present, the struggle against class domination falters and can take horrendous detours with the powers and tools that industrial capitalism can place in our hands. And so we want to revitalize here at the Church of the Revolution a radical commitment to communism as love of this entire planet and all beings to guide the revolutionary movement towards healthier, constructive achievements. So that's the second principle. The first principle is eco-socialism. The second principle is economic abundance and generosity in sharing. No private property, no private ownership of the means of production, but collective abundance. The third principle is erotic liberation. Love's communism could not exist without the erotic love, the erotic impulse, and how it shapes our being. The dualism of male aggression and female passivity, of course, condemns many and most women to lives of servility. We reject that male-female duality as a construct of social domination. We believe that that duality of aggression versus passivity, not all male-female dualities, many male-female dualities are erotically desirable. Masculinity, femininity transformed through a liberating erotic revolution will still be desirable, but also transcended, because many will choose to be non-binary in their identity. They will find that that is the truest identity they have, is neither male nor female, or perhaps both male and female. However, gender itself will be transcended, and erotic heterosexism will be a thing of the past. This is core. This is the third principle, is erotic liberation, gender liberation. That would be the fifth possibility. The fifth principle would be gender liberation, eliminating the male-female duality, the male-female binary, eliminating the association of masculinity with aggression and femininity with passivity. We reject them. Further, the sixth principle is against the division of humanity into dominant and subordinate racial groups based on ethnicity. We consider that a global crime, not merely a crime against humanity, but a crime against nature, against the earth, to divide people into distinct races and make one race more powerful than all others. White supremacy is a death system that we oppose, and in its place we call for an intercommunal, multiracial, revolutionary, global civilization. We are against racially divided cultures of power and domination, and we support a reconciliation of all humanity into a united, generous rainbow communion in which all the treasures of every culture will be shared as generous gifts from humanity's common history. So that is the sixth principle, is intercommunal, multiracial liberation. The seventh principle is our political principle. Karl Marx himself and Friedrich Engels affirmed that communism, once we began struggling to actually create communism on earth, that the state would begin to wither away because there was no need for a separate state. Love's communism aspires to the highest realization of radical democracy, radical people's empowerment. No more oligarchy, no more elitism controlling our destinies. We, humanity, collectively, and with all of our living species kinfolk, we create a world that we all share and in which we are all empowered to decide what the world and what life should become and what our future will be. All beings will have a vote in this new radical ecological democracy. Every species a voice in this order that will aim at global harmony and creativity. Warfare will also be abolished. This is the seventh principle. I realize I've run out of numbers here. I'll have to renumber these. But the seventh principle, before we get to the eighth, the seventh is that warfare itself will be ended, because if we abolish the state, there will be no more warfare. Warfare will be ended. Swords and plowshares become obsolete. The liberation of all from the domination of any will be the common possession of all living beings on earth. And finally, since this is the Church of the Revolution, we have to talk about religion as a system of both domination and of liberation. And we will talk about irreligion, about atheism. As I have said in multiple videos, you can be an atheist and still believe that Jesus was a communist. You don't have to believe anything else about Jesus, whether he was Son of God or God incarnate or just a cool dude from Palestine, whatever. Just believe he was a communist. Religion and irreligion will be reunited within humanity through the communism of love. Atheism, monotheism, polytheism, and pantheism harmonized into a tapestry of cultural and spiritual richness. Jesus, Buddha, the goddess, Marx, Allah, all inspirational stories and figures from our history that have motivated both actions, both great and terrible. And we live on the fulfillment of the greatness of all religions and of all atheisms and of all non-religions, whatever they may be. For the communism of love fulfills all of humanity's highest aspirations. It frees us from ideological slavery and domination, and it gives us to a world of empowerment, creative, mutual flourishing. The communism of love calls all of us to caring and love for all of our fellow creatures, our fellow beings. The communism of love calls us to this ecological flourishing and wholeness. Communism of love calls us all to abundance and the abolition of poverty forever. The communism of love calls us all to freedom from all systems of oppression and domination. And I close with the words from the prayer of Jesus: "Thy will be done, thy communism come, and may it be so, and blessed be." I hope you enjoyed that little sermon. I consider that to be the closest thing I've ever come to a creedal statement, a confession of faith that summarizes in a short few sentences what I really truly believe and what I really and truly want to make the heart of the Church of the Revolution. And I hope you will consider supporting this online ministry. We have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Commie Preacher, capital COMMIE, capital PREACHER, no space, no underscore, Commie Preacher. Also, subscribe, like our channel. Click that bell to get notified when a new video goes up. I'm going to try to get at least one a week, and if I can manage it, I'll get 2 a week up on this channel. We're not quite at 2 a week, but we are getting past, we're doing better than 1 a week. So thank you so much. Again, this is Charlie, the Commie Preacher, and I'm going to say, have a great time or day or whatever you are in right now. If you need anything that you think I might be a person you would like to interact with, send me a message on the channel. I will get back to you. I answer every comment, every comment. Hopefully you'll never give me so many comments, but maybe you will, that I can't answer them all. But if I can't answer them all, I'll answer them in a video. I want to be here. I want to start a communism of love revolution on earth. And the only way I know how to do that is through creating a religion, a new religion, the religion of love's communism. And I hope it's something that you would support.